going.
Yeah.
What's up, guys? John Sintez, Cutternation Baseball. Got a great podcast coming today, but first, before we get going, if you haven't liked and subscribed to our podcast, we're going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. You can find it everywhere. Audio, video, going all over the place. Got a couple of cool things going on right now. This glove we just released, no pocket, fresh back. We're making an all pitchers series, basically. Pitchers don't need to have a finger hole. It's actually a tell. And so actually holding your hand where you put two in the pinky hole, one, and then you skip the index finger, gives you a better, deeper pocket. So check this out on our website. We've done a limited drop on these right here, but I'm pretty excited about them. They're real stiff. They're very, you pitchers that like to break your glove in yourselves, these will come in pretty neutral out of the box, but I'm giving it maybe a 30% power here on this, and it's barely closing. So you get the time to, adjust it, build it to your hand as a true expert of the game would. Also, I'm going to start it off with this podcast. We've partnered with Marc Pro for a little while now, and you probably see our content goes through it. You can use our code CNBSB to get 10% off this. But I'm excited because this is the guy that we went deep dive at the ABCA last year, which I'm sure we should do it again, by the way, because I know we're planning on going to Nashville. So maybe we can set up like an in-house podcast, like on location or something. I'm sure we could do something cool like that.
Well, I'll definitely be there. It's going to be significantly better than Chicago in January.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, baffling. Yeah. Me being a Florida boy, then moving to San Diego, like, we landed, and then, like, my GM, Eric, is just great. Like, he doesn't like being uncomfortable. We always joke about that, and it just, like, the second he got off the plane, he looked at me and he's like, hey, man, what kind of trap is this? Like,
yeah, just the jetway was the introduction. You realized it was going to be a long week.
Yeah. And thank God we were smart enough to get a little Airbnb, and then, like we just didn't go anywhere until that thing was there, till we got a Uber to where we were going, and then, like, we actually stayed in the same building from the Birdman Bat guys or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I actually met him recently. But interesting story on that note. When I took my first Uber to the convention center, the person had no idea which one we were at, dropped me off at the far convention center. So I had like a mile walk. Oh, it was frigid. It was so cold.
That's brutal. Was it at least your stuff set up?
Yeah, all my stuff was already delivered there, but I show up like eyes watering, just freezing cold. The guy I'm working with, Gary's like, where were you? And I was like, you don't want to know.
Gary, oh my God, that guy's amazing as well.
Gary's interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So, I want to get right to it. I've got a pretty decent knowledge on how a lot of this technology works and stuff. And I came with some questions for you, and you really just hit the nail on the head from that. And so I just want to give you a minute let's start off with a nice intro, let everybody know who you are, and then let's get into the fun stuff. I've got the good, easy questions just to kind of lob it up for you. For us,
some softball and a baseball content.
Yeah, no, but I just know I know these. Like, I've talked to a lot of parents that see our banner that we have here and stuff, and they just don't understand. And I said, my analogy was like, for some reason, if I make a video game analogy to a parent, they kind of understand, especially a dad, right? And I'm just like, look, if you were to like put this watch on, that would be like +5 health in the day. Whatever that means, right?
Yeah.
And all you had to do is wear this watch for 20, 30 minutes. You'd probably be like, dude, I should put this on all the time.
Yep.
It just turns a little weird when there's wires and buttons and numbers and stuff. And that's where you and I had those conversations about that, and we'll get to it. I was just so excited about, like, oh, it is that simple. You know what I mean? So
yeah. And I mean, so anytime you put electricity into anything, much less through the skin, people are going to have some questions. And so the questions you're going to ask me today, I'm sure I've heard them all before, and hopefully we'll answer some before people even ask them. But super fast, my name is Tim Desmarias. I'm the Strategic Partnerships Director for Marc Pro. We are, there it is. This is what the device looks like. We're based out of California, but I actually live in Florida. There's obviously a ton of baseball and things in Florida. And even though we work with basically every single sport that's out there, almost every major sports team in the U.S. uses Marc Pro, Baseball has killed it for us forever. There's probably couple different reasons for that, but we hold baseball near and dear to our heart, and so we love doing affiliate support like this for guys like Cutternation. Which, if I wasn't doing stuff with Cutternation, then I wouldn't be very good at my job, to say the least. So what John's talking about, we met at ABCA in January, and so obviously it's a bunch of coaches at every level out there. I was there with our pro sports director, Gary, who we can have that conversation you want. He's actually known as the anti-ice guy and has really driven the conversation in baseball about not icing, trapping waste in around damaged tissue. But the reason why that's important is because what Marc Pro does is the exact opposite of icing. Like, our goal, and before we get into mechanisms and stuff, our goal is to basically move fluid. We're turning muscles into motors to move fluid. So take a pitcher, for instance, because they're the low-hanging fruit in baseball. They're going to go out there, they're going to throw however many pitches they're going to throw. They're going to do long toss, they're going to do their cool downs, their warm-ups. That arm is getting a ton of torque, it's getting a ton of work, it's getting a ton of stress, and that's going to be joints, tendons, and muscle. And what Marc Pro does is it comes in after you're done throwing, and it takes that muscle and starts contracting it for you. And we're able to do that without doing additional fatigue. So it's not more stress, it's not more overuse. It's so much better than running poles. But what we do is that muscle, as it contracts, is doing 360 compression of every vessel that's in that arm. Most people focus on blood flow because blood flow is important. That's good stuff in, oxygen, nutrients, all the things you want to go to that muscle to repair it. But more important to us, and what most people miss, is lymphatic drainage out. So there's actually lymphatic vessels inside your muscle that don't have a heart to drive all that fluid through, so you have to squeeze it. And that's what a contraction does, is squeezes those. So the basic premise is good stuff in, bad stuff out. So when John's mentioning like the +5 health for the day, right? All we're doing is we're taking systems that are already in play in your body, we're activating them, we're ramping them up, we're not causing any more damage, and then that +5 health comes from optimizing a system. So it is very simple, but once you pull out a device and people see electrodes and things, you're right, they get all antsy about it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And lymphatic, all of these crazy words, right? Like, and so, I like to get things down to the elementary level, and like you said, good stuff in, or good stuff, in, bad stuff out. Let's get a little bit further in it, right? And we were talking, you told me a story about a player sleeping with it, right? And so, I want to get into some scenarios here. And I actually, I told you I went and threw that night, right? We had live at bats that night. I think I threw like 135 pitches or something, right? And I was like, okay, what a better way, right? I know, I'm a big fan of, the strategies of like some other system. Yeah, exactly. Right. Trust to verify. And then also, like, it's kind of hard to put yourself in that state on purpose. You know what I mean? So like, I just know what I feel like because I've been doing it so long, when I finish 130, 150, whatever it is, And so I was like, okay, and to describe that feeling to me, I always tell everybody my arm feels longer and the space between my bones actually feels longer. And Tim, I mean, think about it. I'm throwing, right? I'm throwing, it's extension. It's literally moving, stretching away from my body, stretching away from my body. And I think that out of position feeling, obviously there's going to be some inflammation. There's going to be some things where nerve tissue is going to be touched like it's not supposed to, which sends the pain receptacle to the brain. And so like that to me is like everything, right? I haven't changed my throwing motion in like 15 years. I get, the internet loves to tell me I'm doing it wrong, and I love that because I'll just keep throwing. And it's stuff like this that really almost helps you understand, like literally there's a faster way. And I don't feel like in the recovery space of what I see a lot of baseball players in general do, or just humans, right? Like my parents, my in-laws, I'm like, you're not trying to recover / fix whatever issue is going on faster. You're just trying to do it, whatever the standard protocol of what it is. And I always make this dumb analogy, right? Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just going to say, and and we'll talk about this probably again, I think the reason why people don't do recovery, talk about recovery, is they don't even understand what it is. They know it's a buzzword, they know it's out there, but they don't know why, what the mechanisms are, what their body's doing. And so it's a throwaway term for so many people. We have it in a ton of our marketing and advertising, but we're slowly getting away from that because we're getting the idea that people just don't understand it. It doesn't register a reaction.
I couldn't agree more. You know, the word recovery is very generic. You know what I mean? And
I'll give you a great example. We saw an ad for Birkenstock where they talked about how their sandals help with recovery. That if you're gonna water it down, that's one way to water it down.
Yeah, for sure. That doesn't make any sense. You know, and to me, you know, like I told you before, when I heard Gary on the podcast with Cressy, I was just like, and he went that level of basic with an analogy where my brain would understand, which is where I want to go. Because like the easy softball questions are so much fun, right? And so, you know, that's I've always just tried to what, why, what, and why, right, and how it goes. So we'll start off with the first one here, right? Okay, we'll stay in the pitcher's land, right?
Yeah.
Where's the best place for a pitcher to put these electrodes on his arm, number one, and then two, right? Why?
Okay. Well, I'm actually going to probably answer that slightly in reverse or combine the two. So there's some philosophy. I'm going to give you our protocol, our standard protocol for pitchers, but I'm going to give you a little philosophy of why, so that if someone needs to adjust it, they can do it on the fly. So what we want to do with Marc Pro is we get 4 pads. So you get a little strip that looks like this. We're going to attach the wires to each one. So you have 4 points of contact with the skin, and you have 2 different channels. So we're putting this on the body. We want to have a general idea, and as an athlete, you will have a general idea of what's going to be tired and sore the next day, following your workout, whatever that is. So for a pitcher, we know that's going to be primarily shoulder and elbow. Sometimes you get into mid-back or scaps or that kind of stuff, but we'll start here. So your average pitcher, shoulder and elbow. Now we're a muscle stimulator, so our points of contact with the body are going to be always on a muscle, especially with the small Marc Pro. So what we would suggest is above and below the shoulder, right? If we're trying to make sure that shoulder and all conjoined muscles are getting treated, we go above and below. And the easiest places to put those on your deltoid, so almost right where this Marc Pro thing is, right where he's got his pad, and then the other one's going to go up inside the trap. I would actually take that one. That one's almost like your rear deltoid. I would take that and move it up into the trap, which is, I mean, this is a much larger muscle than your deltoid, typically, because it goes deeper. And in that way, we're on either side of the shoulder. You can put 2 on the deltoid, but honestly, if you put it in the middle, it should fire both rear and front.
I like it there. It feels really good. That's like
that's why I'm saying,
like, maybe it's my soothing thing, right? You know?
Yeah. This is our protocol that I want people to feel free to adjust to what works for them. So here's the thing. If you're just super tight in there, fine. But just another point of reference, you actually have a big lymph node that's inside, like just above your armpit, which most people realize because when they get sick, they have like a little swollen spot in their armpit. That's the lymph node. When we activate the lymphatic system, we're driving waste to those nodes. So by going above and below, we're actually driving it to the collection point. So that's going to be our shoulder. The other place we're concerned about is our elbow. Obviously, there's Tommy John issues, Little League elbow, all the different things that are associated with all that torque being put into your arm. And for a pitcher, to get to that elbow, we're probably going to go into the bottom part of the forearm. So like it's kind of hard to show on video. So like this, everyone focuses on the top of the arm because that's what they look at. But you want to go up underneath. Like think about like an arm wrestler. When they arm wrestle, you see this just like bulge out. It's going to go right inside there.
Yep.
Then the other one is going to go inside the bicep tendon. So a lot of people end up putting it on top of the bicep because they're like, that's the muscle, that's where we're putting it. The reason we go bicep tendon is there's some nerves that are exposed here, and it gives us a much better contraction. So our goal is always to get the biggest contraction possible without ever resisting it. And so like if we go up in the top, we might have to go to 9 to get a really solid contraction. If we go down here, we might not have to, so we have some margin of error there. So that philosophy there is the largest muscles, and put it in the densest part of the largest muscles in the area in question. If the area in question is a joint, we go above and below. So pretty straightforward. So one thing that you mentioned already is you feel more comfortable.
No, hold on.
Sorry.
Time out. You just went into a big thing right there. That was the thing, right?
Yeah. Yep.
So the concept of what we're trying to achieve is you're trying to get it in the middle to have the muscle create the largest contraction. I wanted to reiterate that. I wanted to, because like it just answers the question of where do I put it?
Yeah.
Right. And it just makes it very simple. Okay. And then also the other trick that, just like you said there, I like, and same thing on the forearm right here, right? I'm kind of in the middle, but I'm a little bit wrapped more towards the bottom of what I would say. I feel a lot, and maybe this is just me, I'm not sure if this is a lot of pitchers, but I feel like I get a bigger contraction of the whole thing when it actually happens almost literally. So if this is, the bottom of it right here, it feels like it's closer to my bone, my ulna right here. There's barely any space right here,
Well, you also have that ulnar nerve that runs there, so you might be hitting that and getting an advantage. So here's one recommendation I have for people once they put these on. Put them in the general area, turn the machine on. See what the reaction is. See if it's comfortable. See if it's not comfortable. One of the easiest things to do while it's on is you take that pad, you lightly push. Here, I'll put a pad on. You push down on the pad while it's on the skin and just shift that skin over the surface of the muscle. And you'll feel how it changes that reaction.
Yeah.
So rather than like resticking, it's a pain in the butt, you're probably pretty close already. But by shifting that, we can get a different reaction because the skin doesn't matter, it's the muscle. So then if we shift it to that position, then we're not fiddling and adjusting every time we put it on. And so it's just like a nice little easy way to change that up a bit.
Totally.
And the reason why when I say protocol, I use that term really loosely. We don't really do protocols because everybody's arm's different. The way the muscles are built are different. The where the nerve endings are running are slightly different. The damage that they've done to that arm or previous injuries, all that's different. So everything we say is it's guidance to get you to the best possible contraction. But if you get any sort of contraction, you are getting a benefit. I think that's another big takeaway. Yes, we want the biggest contraction possible, but any contraction is going to create benefit. So can we tweak it and make it slightly better and maybe a little more efficient? Sure, but I don't want people to like really overthink it or stress it or any of that stuff. Put it on, get a contraction, go to town.
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, that's got to answer, same thing, right? I mean, there's a lot of things. Now, okay, so let's continue into this idea, right?
Yeah.
Besides the arm, right? We see, and I mean, the lat is kind of a little bit of the arm, right? We see a lot of bunched tissue, where we get knots or adhesions or, everybody uses different words for it, right? Putting this directly on an adhesion, maybe that's like at the bottom of the lat or maybe the lower back, what would that do to that tissue?
So once again, we are a muscle stimulator. So we don't directly affect adhesions, which are technically fascia. So you can put it right over there, and if you're getting a contraction, the muscle's going to be moving underneath it. You might get some relief there. We would still recommend, if it is somewhere on your lat, still find the best contraction possible in the lat, even if it's not as close to the adhesion as you think it is. But you can do other things and couple that with the Marc Pro for better benefit. So if you're actually trying to do with an adhesion or a knot, if you have a massage gun or a foam roller or a lacrosse ball, any of those things that you already have at your disposal, use that first to like really aggressively attack that adhesion or muscle knot, and then use the Marc Pro after. Because what you're actually doing with, say we use a massage gun, right, is you're breaking up tissue intentionally. And so now there is waste tissue in that area that we have to get out. Well, what does Marc Pro do? It gets waste out. So break it up, put the Marc Pro on. You'll make the Marc Pro session even more beneficial, but you will take that waste out that if you did nothing else with it would re-adhere and you have the same issue tomorrow. The number of times I see guys that just have a massage gun because they feel good, I get it, and they don't really understand how to use it, but that's a whole separate conversation. They use it in the same spot every single day. Well, guess what? If you're using it in the same spot every day without increasing benefits, then it's not doing what you think it's doing.
Right.
So the best thing you can do, and this goes back to all the research ever that's been out there for foam rolling, is couple it with movement, which basically is what Marc Pro is, so that you can remove waste that's been basically liberated.
Love that. You nailed it right there. That, by the way, that's a protocol we do here all the time.
Nice.
And we actually do it before. So let's go into that question right here. Okay. Marc Pro, let's say I got a big tournament weekend coming up. All right. I got a big one. Okay?
Well, like WWBA this weekend in Jupiter?
Probably. Should I, or is there benefit of Marc Proing either the day of before the game or the night before?
So I'm going to say yes with caveats. So this is where it gets pretty interesting. First and foremost, our recommendation is to use it as consistently as possible after any time you stress the muscle. If you do that, you're going to see the best benefits from Marc Pro, the best things that we can offer. However, as baseball players, we throw a lot. And we stress the body a lot. So you're going to feel tight and sore regardless of what you've done. So if you're going into like a big weekend where you know you have a ton of activity, you use it the night before, you'll probably feel a little bit better the day after. If you use it before your warm-up, you're basically creating a little bit more space and blood flow in that muscle, so your warm-up goes easier. The caveat is Marc Pro is not a warm-up, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, I'm going to throw this on and then like shorten my warm-up or whatever. No. Like I would use Marc Pro as a warm-up, especially in cases where the muscle's really tight and the warm-up is going to be kind of hard to do. Because what we will loosen the muscle, will allow less resistance in the muscle. Most people tell you their arm feels lighter after they use it. But we don't do any central nervous system activation, which basically is like the body's awareness, proprioception, like it's understanding of that. It deals with coordination and accuracy and balance. We have nothing to do with any of that. So if you're missing part of your warm-up and thinking you're replacing it with Marc Pro, you can impact your performance. If you keep your entire warm-up and add Marc Pro in, you should positively impact your performance because that muscle has a little bit more room to move and it helps you a little bit. In baseball, one of the primary ways you'll actually see this as a before performance activity is in like a bullpen, where they'll get the guy up, he'll do all his warm-up pitches, he's ready to go, but they're not really quite ready to put him in the game yet. Put him on a Marc Pro. Keep all that activation high so that it's nice and warm. So when they do call on him, he doesn't have to do nearly as much because all that work's been done and you just maintained it. A really cool example.
Wait. Hold on.
Yeah.
That was amazing. So what you just said, right? I'm going to break this down into a little bit different idea.
Yeah.
So I get hot, right? It's the fourth inning, right? Guy struggles, but he gets out of it.
Yep.
Maybe I don't go in for another 30 minutes.
Yep.
So the old school, put a jacket on, move around, maybe do some bands.
Those are still relevant.
I've never heard anybody. I know, but I've never heard anybody say additionally, right? I haven't. This isn't an idea that I haven't seen where it's like, hey, let's throw the Marc Pro on.
Yep.
Keep the right. So we know this goes. I'm on low right now on the Pro Plus, right? It goes to 9. Mm-hmm. Is this a 9? Right? Are we still trying to achieve the exact same thing of maximum muscle contraction?
See, for that, all you're doing is just keeping blood flow moving so that nothing stops. You don't have to get super high because we're not really trying to remove waste or anything or heavy recovery session. Right. If you're comfortable at 9, put it at 9. As long as you don't feel like you're fighting it.
I'm chilling. I'm chilling at 9 right now. I'm having a blast.
What I was going to add to that is when Trevor Bauer is playing, and hopefully he comes back at some point, he was known for using it in between innings. So
amazing. I've never heard this story. This is amazing.
Right.
This is
so
unreal.
If you're on a team with a powerful offense and they're just putting up some crooked numbers, well, you could be sitting on the bench for 30 minutes, right? And so, yes, the pitchers will throw their jacket on to keep it warm and stuff. He'd throw the Marc Pro right up underneath that and just keep the blood flow moving. Because warmth is good. It keeps vasodilation and stuff, but it's not doing anything really for pumping blood through all the capillaries, making sure nothing is jammed up there. So
that's wow. That's really I mean, I can totally see how Major League Baseball would see that as crazy too, like, because that does sound nuts, right? But like we said, after we break it down of like what it's actually doing, it's just passively activating the muscles, and then the goals for what it was. And like, I can remember when I'm playing, and like maybe this is or isn't a scenario to where this would apply, but just the feeling, right? I can distinctly remember playing and like getting hot for a game, and then like my fingers being swollen, but also like I'm up in the mountains where I'm playing, and it's like, if that possibly could be, maybe I was having a bad lymphatic draining system of going, especially if I'm getting swelling.
Once you're warm and blood flow's high, if you stop moving, especially in like you're up in the mountains with elevation, is less barometric pressure, then your fingers are going to start swelling because you're not moving enough to get that waste back out. So that's where Marc Pro comes in. Wow,
this is amazing. I mean, like, it's baffling. It's so smart, right? It like, especially I'm really just thinking about guys. We deal with a lot of rehab guys and a lot of guys that have arm path issues and what they're doing, right? And so one of the things that I'm just constantly like, before you even touch a baseball, we're going to Marc Pro. We're going to soft tissue. We're going to Marc Pro. Just like you had said, that was one of the easy softballs that I was excited about. Like, I don't hear this anywhere.
Yeah.
Right. I don't hear anybody that's talking about, this is not causing any issues. And so like that piece of information and in between thing, or like while you're playing, and then even further, staying more prepared, high efficient. I want to see some guys. This playoffs coming up, because I mean, as stressful as it is, right? Like, you got to have your closer, and he's got to be on top of it, ready to go, and your stopper, and your guys that are just, that are high performance dudes that are stressful on the body, and that was one of the things I prided myself on, is my recovery process, as lengthy as it was doing it just the manual way, right? I was getting massage flushes after when I was throwing. I was doing bands. I was sauna steaming. Which, knowing what I know now, like, yes, those all are effective, but that, that's a 2.5 hour process after the game.
And we don't ever want to take away from any of those practices, right? Like, those are valid modalities to like recover your body. And when you have access to all of them, and if you're a pro sports guy, like a pro sports player, and you have the time, go ahead and do it. None of them are going to hurt you.
I used to send the family home. They, if I pitched that night, especially during playoffs, I'm like, look, you want to go get me some food and bring here? That's great, but I'm going to be here for 2 hours. I love you guys. Right? Kiss, kiss. Bye, mom and dad. See you later, wife. I got things I got to do to it. Because I knew, right? When you're in the playoffs, especially in winter ball, like, every game, every pitch means everything, and you got to be ready. Especially as an import. It's so high leverage, and it was really, really a fun time. But I just remember, like, being dedicated to that process, and being like getting velo numbers back, and just knowing general execution, right? Because every pitcher knows if the body or the arm is tired, the first thing that they go is not the velo, it's the location. You're like, dude, I just can't locate shit. My left hip is super tight, or whatever it is. You know what I mean?
You see that at showcases all the time. Like, these guys don't warm up appropriately. They're out there throwing ridiculous numbers, but who knows where it's going.
Right. I mean, and velo is king. I don't care. I'll die on that sword. Like, you're ranked on your fastball. I need everybody to know. If you haven't figured this out yet, you're literally ranked on your fastball. You have to, like, it's so funny. Like, I made this reference to a parent the other day, but just like wearing a NASCAR shirt. I was like, oh, perfect. You know how in some races you have to get fast enough to qualify to get into the race? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, that's baseball. That's D1 baseball. If you do not throw fast enough to get to this level, they don't care. Okay?
Yeah, there's a threshold you got to meet. I thought it was interesting earlier when you said you'd like to see this on in like people in the playoffs getting deep, especially because it's late in the season. Well, I can tell you that every single team in the playoffs uses Marc Pro, because every Major League Baseball team uses Marc Pro. But what's interesting, and one of the obstacles that we have to overcome, is that most people, when they see stim, they immediately associate it with injury. And if people have been listening this whole time, like, there's a trend here where we're not talking about injury. We're talking about avoiding injury. So like a prehab situation. And that's what actual recovery is. So the reason why you're probably not going to see a ton of Marc Pro highly televised is, one, we don't pay those guys for that. But two, there is most people think of it as injury. And so, like, there's this hesitancy to share that information until you go and talk to a player and you're like, oh, you use Marc Pro? I get DMs all the time where people are like, I use Marc Pro all the time. It's crazy. It's great. But they don't go and share that publicly because they're afraid that it'll lead to an injury conversation.
Right.
Like, I just talked to a really high level high school prospect player. I'm not going to name him because for good reason. And literally
he's
last
not paying
year,
you.
He's not paying us.
He's not paying you. Yeah.
But you'll understand in a second. So last year I saw him at a tournament, and he basically came up to me. He's like, "Dude," and he bought a Marc Pro from me the year before. He's like, "Marc Pro saved my season," and we were like, "Can we use that as a quote somewhere?" He's like, "No, because it sounds like I was injured." And really, all it was is just like he'd just get really stiff after games. Like, he needed to recover faster. Obviously, at that level, they're throwing him in the outfield. They're playing him first, even though he's a pitcher. Whatever, it doesn't matter. By using Marc Pro consistently, he was able to do all of the things that were demanded of him, and he had an amazing season up even through this year. And so Marc Pro is an element of that, but it goes to that conversation of we shouldn't be even though we're used for injury all the time, that is not our goal. Our goal is to keep people healthy, to like protect arms, like arm insurance. Like, it's a different thing that you're doing is protecting your velocity. Like, if you get hurt, what's going to happen? Your velocity is going to go down. It's going to take time to get that back. If we can avoid injuries, if you're being scouted, you're going to get seen more. If you're playing, you're going to have more playing time. Like, if you're getting paid, you're going to play more, you're going to pay more. Like, there's a whole bunch of different things to that injury conversation, and we want to be on the front side of it, not the back side of it.
Yeah. Totally. Love it. I think we're definitely in line in this. Like, the being able to play, just throw longer in your life is not necessarily a conversation a lot of people even talk about. And if you can create better habits of, things that will work, that that will help you do it, and devices like this, why wouldn't you? That's what we tell everybody here. I'm like, that's why we partnered with you guys. I'm like, this is the easiest thing to understand, to understand how simple it is as well as how beneficial it is, and like I said, you say lymphatic draining system to a high school kid, he's going to be like, I don't know what you just cussed at me about, but I am turning you off,
Well, and what's
but
crazy is you talk to parents, or like I talk to nurses, and you're like, lymphatic system, and they're like, I don't know what you mean. You're like, let's have an education session. So it's honestly, it's just good stuff in, bad stuff out. Like, there's no easier way to put it than that.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's move on to one of our next important questions, right?
Yeah, hit me.
How many times a day do you recommend using the Marc Pro? Now, obviously, we need a couple different scenarios here, right? Yeah. We need
Actually, I don't need a scenario. You know what? Because the answer is at least once. At least once. Yeah. Because so to answer your question, you could use Marc Pro until the battery died, which is about 40 hours, and not hurt yourself if you use it correctly. So when we say at least once, what we're trying to get at is consistency, right? Your body is continually going through this curvature of stressing the muscle, damaging the muscle intentionally, and then you have to like get into your recovery mode so that you can get back to your peak performance. And Marc Pro is going to take care of you in that valley. So, like I said earlier, that's our best time, is after you go stress the muscle, use Marc Pro. But if you're feeling extra stressed, you have big things coming on, you can throw the Marc Pro on and you will never do damage to the muscle. So, say you have a showcase, right? Because almost everyone's done a showcase at some point. You got drills in the morning, you got sprints, you got all this stuff. Throw it on after every single session. Use as many times as you want. The cool thing about Marc Pro is that we do not fatigue the muscle ever, which is the big drawback to stim, is that
all right, hold on. There it was again. There it was again.
Yep,
that was huge. That was okay. Yeah. Now, just like you were saying, and I know I do want you to go into that. Mm-hmm. That was the thing right there, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't fatigue the muscle, right? So it is contracting passively, like we were talking about, and that is all over the internet, right? People don't necessarily understand, and that's where, I want to put that story of the guy sleeping with it, right?
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Then right, and we get into that. Let's go that. So let's dive into that right there.
All right.
That was just
so what I was about to mention is that if you use any stim other than Marc Pro, you will get to a point where it starts overworking the muscle because it's basically doing a workout. And that's because those stim units don't create a contraction that mimics how you normally contract your muscle. Marc Pro is the only one that uses our proprietary signal. I won't get into the electrical mechanics of it because no one cares. But it mimics how the muscle contracts itself so that there is zero resistance, which means zero fatigue. So most times our recommendation is if you're using it after throwing a driver 30, 45 minutes, if you got an hour and a half, go ahead and leave it on. Totally fine. But there are instances where you might want to go longer. The example that we talked about was actually not in baseball. It was an NBA player who we can mention, even though we've never paid him, because he's publicly come out and talked about his Marc Pro usage. And that's Dwayne Wade. In 2014, this is I think this is the last finals he was in with LeBron when they were at the Heat. He took a knee to his quad, and it ballooned up to about 3 times its normal size. Now, normally that is basically he's done with the finals. There's no chance he's going to come back. That's like a 2 to 3 week injury because that's a ton of swelling that he has to get out. Well, Marc Pro does lymphatic drainage, bad stuff out. Guess what? Swelling's bad stuff. We want to get it out. Usage of Marc Pro is going to get the swelling down. So Dwayne Wade basically lived on this thing. He had it on for 16 hours straight. Part of that was sleeping through the night with it. Yep. But he got 95% reduction on the radius of his quad, or the extra radius of his quad, and he's able to come back after missing 1 game. So rather than him finishing his season on the bench doing nothing, he's able to come back and actually help him in Game 7.
That's crazy. Two weeks to 3 days. That's gnarly.
Exactly. So, and all it's doing is using the systems that are already there. Most times, people are going to resort to the Rice method, right? Rest, do nothing, get no lymphatic drainage, get no movement, ice, trap that waste there, compression, which has no guidelines to it, like how much compression, how long to leave it on, whether to do movement with it, and then elevation, which will have a very light passive benefit to it because your body is designed to pump upwards against gravity. But anyway, so the Rice protocol is completely insufficient at getting... Well, guess what? Marc Pro is lotion. That might have come out wrong. Marc Pro is motion, which means that instead of passively waiting for the body to heal itself, we're telling the body, we're going to fix you much faster with the systems you have in place, and it goes ahead and does it for you. So, extreme example for sure with Dwayne Wade. Excuse me. But that goes into play with basically anyone. So if you're now, if this is an actual medical issue, obviously that went through his team doctor, then you should go still see a doctor. Like if you think of a fracture or dislocation or something, don't just throw Marc Pro on it and be like, I'm good to go. But if you have if you're a catcher and you take a ball off somewhere and there's some swelling, go ahead and pump that out with the Marc Pro. Same thing if you're a pitcher, if you're a first baseman. If you like rounding the bases and you tweak your ankle and there's a little bit of swelling, go ahead and pump it out. In fact, if you're rounding the bases and you tweak your ankle, before it even starts swelling, put the Marc Pro on. Because your body's we know what's going to happen. The body's going to send fluid there to help repair it. And if we don't move, that fluid accumulates into swelling, which compresses the nerve, which causes pain. It actually, when you have swelling, there's pressure there. Like your body can't actually get more good stuff there. So let's help with the good stuff in, bad stuff out. Bring more good stuff there. Get the obstructing waste out so you decongest that area. So more good stuff in, bad stuff out, much faster. You'll get back to 100% a lot quicker. Yeah.
So not only like non-impact throwing stress into there, but impact damage, right? Like there's another gym. Kind of funny story that I go a little bit further with that. when I was in Mexico, one of my roommates, catcher, lefty, fouled a redirect a 96 right off the mid calf. Okay, he had a human head on the inside of his calf, right? And we're in the playoffs, and I'm like, dude, I'm telling you, compress it, right? So we put a sock on it, and then I went to the trainer and I helped him over there, and we just had a TENS unit, right? Something's running there, and we put it on it, and the blood flow that went through it, it was crazy. Like he was already worried. Like it swelled up so fast, he was worried that he was going to have to drain it, like cut it and drain it. And like he was already freaking out. And so even just doing it just a little bit, we did like 15 minutes or something like that. We could see the swelling go down into it. So I'm in on that. It's an awesome idea. You know, this information is just, it's missed, like I said, and it's hard to find. So, you know, coming directly from you, Tim, I appreciate it. It's been, this has been amazing, because I hope, you know, this is going to go out into the interwebs. There's a lot of good information here. So to
double down on that just a little bit for the information being available, one thing that a lot of people don't realize about Marc Pro is like, we know it's very simple to use, but at the same time, it's going to create a rabbit hole of questions. We offer free coaching to anyone. So if you ever get a Marc Pro, you go on our website, you can schedule time with us. We will call you and actually do a personalized coaching call with you to answer your specific questions. Because like right now, you have some softball questions and things, but like as an individual user, you'll have very specific questions that probably you're just not going to go and find those somewhere on YouTube or through a Google search. So we do that. Our website has a ton of great information on it. Like there's a digital body map where you can like click on a shoulder and see pad placements. Our manual is pretty awesome, but we really, really want to promote that personalized coaching, because we don't we don't make any money off of it. Like it doesn't help us to sell more units. It just makes sure that the people that are using them get the most benefit out of it possible.
Right. Yeah, that's important, right? Like talking directly to an expert, you know, that knows how to put this thing where it is, that's going to calm a lot of minds. It's going to move a lot of products too. You know, I think, you know, knowing that's a huge piece right there. We're going to have to clip that for you, send it over so you can enjoy right in there. Because you've been dropping some bombs on me again. You know what I mean? So last thing, and we'll go into it, you know, you guys always have really good things to say about, you know, advice about, you know, situations and scenarios. You know, what is kind of like the thing that people miss? What's the thing that's going to be like, okay, I need to do this now. I need to do this more often. Like how important to, you know, to when you guys have a conversation, right, as you go into it, how important to just anybody who I like to use the word professional, but I also like to use like serious, you know, because like
just
I don't
people
think
that take what they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously,
you know, because exactly. Like how, you know, what's the move on this device right here? This is so important because X. You know what I mean?
I think what it is turning people's idea of how to get better on its head. So when most people think about, well, how am I going to get stronger? How am I going to get faster? How am I going to get more agile? Or any of those things, they always think about the proactive side of things. Going to the gym, lifting, throwing, doing all those things. And yes, you have to do those, but those are simply a stimulus, right? You got to do the right ones. You got to have the right programming. But that every time you lift or you run or you throw, you're making your body weaker for a time, right? The only way to really get better is to do that stimulus and then to recover properly. Because recovery, back to that conversation, is adaptation to stimulus. Basically what I'm saying is you give your body something to deal with, and then the response to that is recovery. So if we don't do any improved recovery, right? Like that's where overuse comes in. If I go to the gym and I lift every single day, I'm going hard. I'm getting all the gains. Well, that's how you get injured, right? That's overuse. Overuse isn't doing too much of something. It's not recovering. So overuse is really under recovery. So what Marc Pro does is we don't technically speed up recovery, but we remove so many obstacles and optimize recovery that when you go to the gym, if you want the best results from chest day or leg day, use Marc Pro after, so you're back to 100% faster. You'll get more adaptation each time, and so you'll get stronger faster. You'll get quicker faster, and even better, you're less likely to get injured, which basically is a big roadblock, right? So avoid injury, adapt better, and just be better in general. And one thing I like to bring up, especially in this part of the conversation, is recovery itself is really hard to quantify. So what we did when we started doing some of our studies was we were like, how do we show people that recovery is going to help them in a long period of time? So we did a longitudinal study. I think it was 8 weeks. We took one group of people that they did a benchmark workout and they lifted for 8 weeks. They had programmed, prescribed workouts. And then we had another group, same exact thing, except that group got to use Marc Pro for 30 minutes after. So same demographics, same age, all that fun stuff. Your Marc Pro group, both groups showed increase in strength, right? But the Marc Pro group had a 50% increase in strength over the control group. So we were able to show that over a period of time, consistent usage of something that helps you with your recovery yields better results. So to answer your question real simply, what makes Marc Pro critical is if you are competitive, if you are trying to get to the next level, why wouldn't you do something that you can use in front of the TV or on your car ride home that will inevitably increase your performance and increase your results? So basically, get better faster.
Love it, Tim. You're the best. You are. This is,
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, you have the knowledge and the understanding of the scenarios to where things to apply. I mean, it even goes back to, the first day we really met where we hadn't really had a conversation, and I already knew, and I was like, I had a kid. I was like, hey man, can we just throw him on this thing for like 15, 20 minutes? And you're like, that's exactly what we do. It was like, that's what I need, because I need this kid to stop freaking out, But that's what, the anxiety and the high leverage situation for these kids, I try to explain to these parents all the time. You take him to a place he's never been, in a tournament or a scenario of a showcase that is the highest thing he's ever done.
Yep.
He's probably, to your point, going to overtrain and over-prepare to get ready for that and not be ready to go. And so if you understand that, just like you're saying, it's not bad to train multiple times a day, right? It's bad to not have the entire process optimized, like you were saying. And so, it's amazing, just to be able to talk to you and get the company to really just have conversations like, because I think this should happen all the time, because it's just so important. I've heard this on Joe Rogan before. He talks about it. I've heard a lot of people about this, and it's still like you said, it's still electrodes and a unit and a thing, and people are like, I don't know, But I can't wait.
There's two sides to that. So let me get into something real quick, just because it's something we kind of glazed over. There's their group of people that you mentioned, electrodes through the skin, scary, right? Like, I don't know what it's going to do. Marc Pro doesn't feel electrical. It shouldn't be scary. But there's another group that they're like, well, I've done 10 units my whole life. Why is this so expensive? Well, Marc Pro isn't a TENS unit. So if you're in that group where you're like, I've done electrotherapy before, stim, shock therapy, whatever that is, if you haven't used Marc Pro, then you haven't, you just won't understand until you try it. Because the most important thing when you're talking about putting electricity through the skin is what kind of electricity you're putting through the skin, right? It doesn't matter what your unit looks like. It doesn't matter what your wires or your pads look like. What matters is how that is interacting with your body. And what Marc Pro does better than everyone else, because we have this proprietary signal, is that our signal is super safe. So parents can give it to their 12, 13-year-olds. It's super effective because it mimics the body's natural function. And then it doesn't feel electrical. So if you've done any stim and you're like, I don't like how it feels, maybe you should try Marc Pro. If you've done stim and you didn't think you got results, maybe you should probably try Marc Pro. There's all of these things that when people enter that space, they just assume all of them are the same. And I understand why people would do that, but it is something that they probably want to get their mind around to see what those differences are.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I've used all of the stim units, the wall unit at PT, the hip pocket TENS unit with the D battery, and this by far, like you said, it feels the best. You know what I mean? People are scared to go max, right? And that was one of the other things that we talked about earlier, right? Like, is 11 too high, or is 9 too high? And it's just maximum contraction is the goal, right? So maybe it's not a 9 one day, maybe it's a 7. I don't know. You know what I mean? But you feel it, right? And so even I've had it on this entire time that we've had this podcast rolling, and like I can feel my forearm feeling better. I feel my shoulder just feeling a little better, my trap, it's just real important for us to get this information out there. And we'll probably have to do this, every year, because as you probably know, the way the market goes and how things go, people need reiteration of information, which I am always excited to have conversations with people like you. Like I said, us going to the ABC and me taking my team, like they didn't understand what they were getting to. This is my second year going, and I was like, you don't understand. Like, we get to go talk to the people, like the actual people that talk about it. You just don't, and so I appreciate your time on this. I don't want to eat up any more of your time on there. We've crushed it. We've got almost an hour, but this has been great. I'm going to chop this up and definitely get you guys some content on these things. But
awesome.
Guys, if you have any questions, I'm sure you could DM the company on their IG page. Tim, we'll get your contact information going into that as well for people. I don't know how you'd like for them to reach out, but go ahead.
Honestly,
how can people get a hold of you?
The best way is to DM our IG. We're super active on there, and we're just getting to be more and more active because it's an easy way to reach out to us. So if you have questions, send them there. And if we want to schedule a call, we do that all the time. So just send us a DM. We'll make it work for you.
And then don't forget your free coaching session on where, how to set it up and do everything right there. That's
funny.
Massive value,
It's funny you mentioned that because Brian Moore is our, I think what we would call him, athlete experience director. He does all of those. He actually just popped in the chat. So
nice.
It means he has some free time, which means that people should be scheduling coaching calls so he can get back to work.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, it's been a blast, Tim. I appreciate your time. You covered pretty much everything that I was hoping to cover on this. So, and for all of our viewers and everybody that's watching this and will catch this later, don't forget, use our code and snag yourself one of these right here. You get 10% off the unit. Yeah, it is a little expensive, but like you're saying, proprietary signal that is going to give you the best, most optimized recovery. I feel like I nailed it right there for us. So
I think you did it.
Yeah, for sure. You know us. We're always trying. So thank you again, man. I appreciate it. Guys, don't forget, use the code. If you're interested in one of our gloves or our hats or any of our gear, Cutternation.net. You know the drill. Do the thing. Support the brand. Appreciate it.